You agree that the Singaporean context is different from the Ghanaian context, and indeed, I'm very lucky.
I'm talking about
as an example.
I'm talking about the initiation.
Yes,
not.
I know, because I'm asking this because I remember speaking to both you and the senior minister of Singapore not too long ago.
Right.
And a lot of people don't see Singapore as a democracy in the way in which we see ours.
Right.
So that the decision-making process and the consensus building may not necessarily be the same.
Well, you've moved from the value to the decision
process.
Okay,
you are essentially saying that when Singapore dreamt of creating what they created, nobody saw it that way. But my point to you is that there are many more constituencies of people to bring along in a situation like ours than in Lee Kuan Yew's case. And therefore, you may have to use a different approach, which is why I pointed to the complexity of this and why public understanding and buy-in may be more important than it was in Singapore.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that that's a very different question than the value one is bringing to the country and the vision that wants to go. And therefore, the humility to manage the democratic process so that you have enough people about you. Now, I'm not necessarily sure that we don't have majority of people behind us. I know there's a lot of discussions going on, and I did meet the press at some point, and I met the CEOs yesterday at some point. So I'm teasing out exactly what it is that is offensive, in a sense, so that we do not lose a good thing.
Okay, let me make it simple. Some of the points that have been raised. So we've been told we are looking for up to $500 million.
We are looking to sell up to 49% of the company.
Up to
49% of the company.
How much are we hoping to raise for the 49%?
No, we had said that we want to raise 500 million, but we are selling up to 49%. So it may very well be, depending on our negotiations, pricing, good luck, market forces, the valuation will be such that 500 million may be, I don't know, 20%, 25%, we don't know.
But are you not giving a signal to the market if the book value that we are told is $1 billion, so that it can influence the amount you raise? If you say you are looking for $1 billion and you are saying you are selling up to 49%.
No, I didn't say I was looking for $1 billion.
Well, the book value you placed was $1 billion.
Okay.
So my question then is, aren't you locking yourself
for example, Ashanti, I think was it 93 when we went to market or wherever we did? I think that the book value was about 460 million. We went to market at 1.8 billion. You get me? I'm trying to let you know that you dissociate the book value from the market value. When we go to the market, I'm going to look at comparables, which will suggest that a multiple of what you call the net asset value. And that ranges from 0.6 times to about 3.2 times. So in that bracket is where one is going to play to see how high one can go.
Does that mean that if you...
And so that signaling that you believe sets the price is not even...
So is there a minimum that you would take, and that if you went to the market and felt that what investors were prepared to give and the response was lower, you would say, this is not good enough for Ghana?
Yeah, that's our call. Anytime we get permission from Parliament to go to the Eurobond market, you know, all we are given is 3 billion. And now you go and then you make the call at the last minute as to, is this good for us or not? How much should we take? What is the maturity, longevity, etc.? And that is the trust that we've been given a mandate to think through what is really best for Ghana. And I think overall, over these 3 years, we've proven that the primacy of the Republic is what will drive us to any conclusion.
So what's the minimum valuation signal the market gives that you would take?
I don't know, and it's pretty dangerous, as you know, in the capital markets to give forward-looking because the market frowns on that. In the same way that I wouldn't have been able to give you any sense of what I'm going to do or 41-year maturity or 6.75, whatever. And that becomes a complication of dealing with the market. So the issue one is to ensure that people understand that this is not a crony transaction, and that the company is owned by government 100%, and there's no way of finding a way for some beneficial owners to be in that. I think that should be clear to everyone on that the issue of tax havens are used, and I think on the London Stock Exchange there may be close to 70 or so companies and that Jersey is actually part of the UK. And the UK says that, well, if you want to register in London, I'll tax you. But if you register in this company, which the stock exchange accepts, I won't tax you. Yeah. And then the question becomes, what do you then do with these resources?
But whilst I agree that the market has rules, I'm sure you'd admit that when it has to do with a sovereign, as a country, creating a vehicle that goes to market, there may be certain kinds of information that, if for nothing at all, the legislature or certain aspects of the country ought to know. So whilst you can't put it out in the public fully, the questions I've asked about what the minimum amount you would take, does Parliament, for example, know the details of your analysis? Do they have an idea of the projections you made? Because I'm sure there are rules of secrecy that Parliament can decide to know but not publicize in order not to break the market rules, because these are the 200 and something people have put there to decide for us.
Yeah.
So have they been given these calculations? Do they understand your assumptions in detail in terms of the valuation, for example?
Yeah, I think, first of all, the issue of fair or book value analysis now as to what the market would take, we actually don't know. It's going to be a multiple of the net asset value. And that, in the same way, when I go to Parliament, I can't tell them what interest rate I'm going to get. I just can't, because it's negotiated in the last minute. It's the same way in which, in the end, as we go to the roadshow, you begin to pick up the sentiment of that before you strike a deal. But we know that it will be within the range of 0.6 times NAV to 3.2 for the Franco-Nevadas that you're talking about. And that's what has to happen. But it is not a mystery with regards to the issue of going to the stock market, i.e. what information is required for you to do, and in the end, how it is valued, and the restrictions that we all go through to be able to get there. And if it's not a good deal, we will not do it.
But what is a good deal? I think that's the question, because
a good deal can be ranged, as I said, between 0.6%, 0.6 times NAV to 3.2, because those are the comparables on the market. So you can see the range of the possibilities that may happen. Then you begin to think about, well, yours is a new company, the original geography is this, etc., etc. So what type of premium or discount can you get? And that's what we do when we go and we are a triple B company.
So there are two issues here. You need to raise some money up front, and then you also want to create a company that can behave like a Franco-Nevada or those other companies that Wheaton and Co. who then develop other projects. So let's talk about the first part. What is the purpose of that initial money? As in, do you have specific things you want to do with, whether it's $500 million? Yeah. Do you have a specific?
I think the thoughts that we have are to use maybe about 20% as our cash to be able to pursue other royalty companies that we feel will be good for that growth. To look at maybe another 20% to look at the value chain in terms of a real refinery of gold that is accepted internationally, and then the whole jewelry, education, tourism market, and how to get SMEs to begin to participate in the jewelry market of gold, in a real way. You go to Botswana and, where to buy diamond rings, etc. It's all over the place. Can we create that enthusiasm which will support our tourism industry? And then the education part, so that schools can be. And then we have infrastructure. The president launched this Agenda 111, which essentially is saying get 101 hospitals in each of these districts, etc., etc. And what he also has said is that, with this Agenda 111, I'm also saying that all of the construction is to be done by Ghanaian companies. And why is that important? Because I want to segue this into mass housing. Okay, so that the issue of this 2 million deficit in housing and mortgages can also be tackled. Okay, so those are areas that we are going to participate in. And then, as you know, the financial chassis is one of the most significant things for us. And so the new National Development Bank, which will be a wholesale bank that then is able to trickle and invest in our financial system, mortgage financing, to enable all of us to be able to have that mortgage system. So those become the driving force. And as you saw in the media review, we also launched the Obatampa project, which was a 100 billion Ghana project, 30 billion from government and 70 billion for that. So you begin, God willing, with a successful election ready to go. And I
so let me just get something. You've mentioned a broad range of things. Some are projects, some are programs, and some are short-term, some are long-term. What I wanted to pin you on was, if you got the 500 million, are there specific projects within the year? This question arises because the view is that the royalties we would get for 2019, if we look at what we've gotten for the first half, could well get to at least $200 million. The point is that the 500 million you're looking to raise upfront, you could get it in 3 years worth of royalties. So that if you are bringing the money earlier this year, is it because there are some pressing things you need to do now for which you need it? Because you could get that money by end 2022.
Yeah. So the question becomes, Bernard, where as a center-right party, what do we believe in? And do I believe that in the long run, participation in the capital markets has certain ancillary benefits beyond what we are talking about? And I deeply believe in that. And I think we should maximize on that, especially at the point in which we have the highest prices in gold that we could ever think of.
Fair enough, but still, I understand that that's for the long term. But the question is, what would you use 500 million now for that you couldn't do with 500 million in 2 years?
Well, the question really is that given the plethora of programs, including the Obatampa, I need to make sure that I secure my sources of financing so that the program can go on. And this will help. And the reason why I'm comfortable about it is that even in future, depending on how market forces are, you're going to have a company that is consistently creating value and also paying dividends, which could, in the end, more than equal the royalties that you are earning.
Are you opting for the equity approach because of our debt situation? Or maybe let me rephrase, why equity in a company? Because some would say royalty is direct revenue. This route you are using, dividend depends on profit, so it's more indirect. And you are selling equity in a company. So, of course, it's not as guaranteed as knowing that every year you are going to get at least $150 million. So I want you to walk me a bit through why using this vehicle why are you using this vehicle?
Great. So you acknowledge that we get some huge upfront capital
yes.
to do whatever we want to do, depending on the price that we eventually strike. It could be a lot of money. And then you have what you call capital gains, depending on the way in which the market forces work and where. So that is also another value that is there for you. Now, in terms of the dividends that are paid,
yeah.
You're going to get royalties flowing into this company, of which, depending, I think typically they have a 30% also pay out to the royalty companies. So depending on that and how far we want to go, you will still be getting part of those royalties that you're talking about. So it's not like you're shut off. Before the profitability of the company, as you said, that you've invested in, that also comes. So you're going to have the issue of potentially a rising valuation of the company. You're going to have profits of the companies that you've invested in, and then you're going to have your own royalties from Ghana coming through as income that can also be paid. So you're not really losing all of the royalties. You're going to lose a further
But I'm saying that the profits will depend on how the company is run, and to the extent that in the space in which you are playing, the vehicle you've created is new.
Yeah.
Its track record in identifying viable mining projects may not be as strong as its competitors.
Well, but that's for
your
now.
Profit expectations might have to be less optimistic.
It could be.
So that's what I'm saying, that you are switching a direct assured revenue stream
right.
for a revenue stream which may not be guaranteed.
Yeah, but I'm creating something new, and a revenue stream. It's almost like me being an entrepreneur. I move from being a civil servant in which I'm assured of my income to go into an area that has more risk. But that's a way to build society. That's a way to build companies. That's a way to do. And I'm also now creating a way in which, consolidated fund does not eat up all my money without me being able to account to you.
But you need to admit that because of your background as an investment banker, you see risk differently from most non-investment bankers.
I think you're right on that, and therefore it's my responsibility to make people comfortable about it. But as to believing in it, I do. And I think that is what is driving how we have operated. But fundamental to everything we do, Bernard, is the supremacy of making sure we have resources to develop the human talent of this country. And it's difficult for one to continue to sit when you know the game is being played and value is being created, enormous value, and we are constantly talking about the physical.
Yeah, but sorry I keep going back to this. I just wanted to get another point, because I asked about debt versus equity, because I do know that the previous administration securitized the flow of road toll funds to get debt. So 500 million may be a lot of money, but you've raised more before.
Yes, it has.
As debt. So I want you to talk to me about this new thing you're creating and why you want to diversify away from simply going to raise $1 billion or $2 billion, either using a normal bond or diaspora bond. Why this particular one?
I mean, Bernard, the market has changed, okay? But more importantly, I mean, one always tries to get a portfolio that is as diversified as possible and give the Republic various avenues to sit. So we have a good following of investors who buy our bonds. We've never really gone into the equity space, and that brings a whole different slew of investors who are focusing on your country. These investors are therefore even more likely to be FDI investors, as they begin to understand your story. And as you know, I think Africa has, is it maybe $32 billion of FDI last year or something like that. I mean, it is woefully inadequate, okay? And therefore, it's an issue of the story and how to reduce the asymmetry of information. And so that broadens our appeal to a lot more people and ensures that we had a wider berth than we would.
Are you concerned about our debt levels though, as one of the reasons why you opted for equity and not raw debt? Is that part of the thinking?
We always do, are concerned about our debt level because it has an impact on the resources you use to be able to service it, as opposed to other investments that we may have to do. As you know, there's a team of African finance ministers looking at this whole issue of Africa's debt, the debt standstill issue. How do we create a new vehicle that will go through, which may be enhanced to make sure that we get better ratings to reduce the cost of going to the market. So the debt issue is a constant area of concern for all of us.
Okay, this is the point of view. We're talking to Minister of Finance Ken Ofori-Atta. It's a one-issue interview, the Japa deal. 5 agreements were approved by Parliament on the 14th of August. It's generated a lot of public debate, not just in Parliament, but also in civil society. And Minister of Finance is trying to explain the rationale behind the deal. We'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll ask a few more questions around points raised by some civil society in relation to alternatives. And we'll also take some comments around some legalities. Stay with us. One of the concerns people have raised is that this deal appears to be something we've signed to
So that was the finance minister speaking to Bernard Avler, trying to explain the reasoning behind Ejapa and what he's trying to do with it. You can catch that full interview on his program, The Point of View, on Monday at 9 p.m. On City TV. But I hope that it has at least it has cleared the path for us to have a meaningful conversation this morning. And to have that conversation will be the Honorable Inusa Fuseini, Member of Parliament for Tamale Central Constituency. Franklin Kujo, President of Imani Africa, will join us via Zoom for this part. And Mr. Richard Ahiagba, the Executive Director of the Dankwa Institute, will also be with us for the Ejapa part of the conversation. So good morning, gentlemen.
Hey, good morning.
Morning.
Good to see you. Richard, it's been a while.
Quite a while, yeah.
You haven't been here since you took up your new role.
Interesting, but I've been watching you.
Yeah, and I've also been watching you.
Yeah,
Honorable Inusa Fuseini, always good to have you here. You were here 2 weeks ago, so I will not welcome you extensively.
Well, you don't need to worry. I'm happy I'm with Richard. Because he promised that he will go and research your matters and come and educate me on.
The last time you were here.
The last time we met somewhere else.
All right, so Honorable Fuseini, I guess I will start the conversation with you. Get to the heart of the matter. Has he answered the questions? Your side, the minority, did a press conference where you put out a couple of points. Has he answered these questions for you?
Well, I think that is appropriate for me to say good morning to you, my good friend and colleague, Richard. I'm from Blamazado. I don't know where you are from.
Oh, really?
Yes, and so...
I didn't know that.
And then to your cherished viewers and listeners. It's important for us to understand that our objection to the Ejapa deal is founded on many grounds, principally on constitutional grounds.
Oh.
Principally, and all through this conversation, I do not hear anybody avert his mind to the constitutional breach that was occasioned in Parliament as a result of the passage or the ratification of the agreements so entered into by the finance minister through the Ejapa deal.
Which breach was that?
Well, Article 106 of the Constitution is very clear on lawmaking. But let me backtrack so that you can follow and your viewers can follow us. Mm-hmm. In 2018, the minister came to Parliament and told Parliament that it was important to establish a platform, a vehicle, which will receive all government royalties as income, so that we could be tracking the utilization of the income, and we could properly account for the utilization of those income. That view was encapsulated in the Minerals Income and Investment Fund Bill. That bill established a statutory body pursuant to Article 195 of the Constitution. So that statutory body was a public company. Okay? Now, being a public company, the objects of the company permitted the Minerals Income and Investment Fund to set up an SPV for the purposes of entering into agreements with third parties for on behalf of the Mineral Income and Investment Fund. In 2020, that SPV was solely owned by government, was a creature of the Mineral Income and Investment Fund, and was to act for and on behalf of the Mineral Income and Investment Fund. It was not intended in that law that the SPV will have a separate legal character as the fund. It was like, if we want a mistletoe. The SPV was going to grow on the Mineral Income and Investment Fund. We passed the law. In 2020, the Minister of Finance came back to Parliament and said that the way we crafted the Minerals Income and Investment Fund Act and the establishment of the XPV made it impossible for the SPV to become commercially viable and also to run on good governance principles. And so they came for an amendment. Okay? So that law, that Minerals Income and Investment Fund Act, was amended. Article 106 was complied with. Parliament had passed the amendment. Okay? But the amendment had not yet been assented to by the President.
Okay.
So there was no law on which AJEPA could be ratified in Parliament. Because that ratification of AJEPA in Parliament was built on the amendment to the Mineral Income and Investment Fund Act. And since that amendment had not yet been assented to by the President under Article 1067, there was no law. There was no law for the purposes of ratification of AJEPA. And so, when AJEPA came before the House, and it was moved and seconded by the majority, when my colleague AJEPA Meza got up to contribute, I arrested the contribution on a preliminary point and drew the attention of the House that we were engaged in an illegality, that there was a constitutional breach, because Parliament had passed an amendment. So we could not pretend that we were either dealing with the old law, and we knew that at the time that we were considering the ratification of AJEPA, which was built on the new amendment, we knew that the President had not assented to it. So what basis was the AJEPA ratified? So when you go and look at the resolution, when you go and look at the resolution that was passed on the 14th of August, the resolution is passed subject to the assent of the law by the President. Again, it raises a constitutional matter. Does Parliament have speculative jurisdiction? No. No Parliament has speculative jurisdiction. anywhere. Parliament cannot speculate that the president will sign, will assent. So the resolution itself raised, and if you go, you can retrieve the resolution. When the minority walked out, the resolution that was passed by the majority was passed on a condition subsequent. The Ajapa deal could only be enforced if the president ratified or assented to the bill. To a bill that was amended. So it confirms what I had said earlier, that when Ajapa was brought, there was no law.
But when you raised that issue on the floor that day, and you arrested the seconding of the motion by Honorable Mercer, what did the speaker say?
Well, the speaker listened to me and asked me whether, in my view, I thought that Parliament could not do that. I said, one, in my view, Parliament could not do that. Because Parliament, after the passage, Article 106(7), after the passage of when a bill is passed by Parliament. So that is a conclusion of an exercise. Immediately the bill is passed, you can't bring back the bill. It has to go full circle. It has to be assented and an amendment brought to it. You have finished. That is what we call in law, you become functus officio. I explained to him. And I said that to continue to exercise our powers of ratification of an agreement based on the bill that has been amended, which has not been assented to, was to engage in the constitutional illegality. The majority leader then invited me to rest my case, and that they had prepared Ayini to canvass that position. Ayini eloquently canvassed that position and quoted Lord Denny in his famous judgment in which he said, "You cannot put something on nothing and expect it to stand. It will fall." Because there was no law. That is why I always think that we must come back. The civil society and the civil society organizations in law should go back and look at the process. I still believe.
Hasn't that ship sailed?
Huh?
Hasn't this ship you are talking about, hasn't it sailed? In terms of if the CSOs go and look back, what will happen?
No, because I believe that the deal itself, having been procured in non-constitutional manner, no matter, I mean, it is incurably bad.
Based on that?
Well, based on that alone, it's incurably bad because you can't rectify that. If there was no law,
even if the president assents to it, it still doesn't change the situation.
It's ex facto. It's after the fact, and so it can't be cured. That is my view constitutionally. That if there is no law, and a deal, have you forgotten Article 1(3) of the Constitution, where Parliament has no powers, a substantive limitation on the power of Parliament to pass retroactive legislation. So, if a law comes into force on a day, that law, apart from tax laws, that law cannot have retrospective effect. So I'm saying that it cannot stand. Now, that is the first leg. The second leg, and because we are arguing this on the basis of what the minister said, I'm prepared to, I would have said that if somebody commits murder, and it is assault that he committed with the intention that the assault results in murder, you don't charge that person with assault. You simply charge that person with murder. Okay? So I wouldn't have gone, these are ancillary matters to the fundamental question of whether Ajapa was properly
born legally. Okay, hold on for me. We have a quick break coming up, and then we can hear from. You will continue your point. We'll hear from Mr. Richard Ahiagba and Franklin as well, who has been attending these engagements. We'll try and find out where these engagements are. But keep your messages coming through. I have a couple. Walanyo in Akwatia says the Japan royalties deal could be an angelic one with a heavily stamped, but as much as people don't understand the deal. But people do not understand the deal. I hope the government does not rush into its implementation, but tries to engage and educate the public, especially the NDC, so that they avoid throwing dust into the eyes of citizens. And then I want to find out why Mr. Ferrata is not answering exactly what the money will be used for. Anytime that question comes up, is it a smart way to dodge the question, or there's actually nothing to tell about what the 500 million will be used for? Good morning. Ejapa. In a country where many can be misinformed and misled easily by our politicians using nice words and promising to take Ghana and everybody to paradise almost immediately, the generality of our citizens might not be able to discern when the managers of the country take us on the road to disaster. This has got nothing to do with political season or democracy. This Ejapa project is simply put a disaster. When most of us have only attenuated voices and all politicians cannot be trusted either, we can only look up to CSOs to help steer better monetization and management of our resources, which we have benefited from all these ages through the consolidated fund without even appreciating. I urge CSOs to stay on the dedicated, truthful course to save Ghana from this Ejapa project. So keep the messages coming. 0550 585832, 0550 585832, and 0549 986 996. We'll be right back.
There are those with untold stories, unraveled feats, life-changing stories, and lasting legacies. They tell their stories themselves on footprints.
I didn't hear let him go. I heard come and take him. They took me to another room. There was this muscle man with the cane ready. With 12 canes. Then I told myself I won't yield. So I kept my teeth together. Pow, pow. I mean, heavy canes.
Lecturer at KNUST.
Lecturer, very popular lecturer, based in KNUST, being whipped by heart by a soldier who, you know.
Be inspired by their hard work and resilience that led to their outstanding achievements as we trace their footsteps through time.
But I was able to set a record at Apollo.
Wow.
Because Apollo is a place that, you know, it's not only one act.
Yeah, of course.
So when you perform one song, you need to leave for the next act to come. I was able to do 2 songs at a go.
Wow.
Because when I was performing, all of a sudden, about 3 African-American girls, they jump on the stage, started to do my songwriting thing with me. Then the whole, hey, everybody, hey. Then when we finished the music, then I said, do you want more? They said, yeah. Then I looked at the face of the promoter. He couldn't do nothing. He said, okay, go ahead. You know, then I put in the Sumgodu, because my first what I did was this song that you hear, Brent said. That's what I did. After that, I put in the Sumgodu. Man.
So join me, Samuel Atamensa, and my guests every Saturday at 9 a.m. and Sundays at 4 p.m. for Footprints, only on City TV.
Footprint is sponsored by Bethel Logistics Company Limited, experts in shipping logistics.
Welcome back to The Big Issue, your favorite weekend news analysis and current affairs program, discussing the Japa. And we've just heard for the past 40 minutes or so the finance minister in an interview with Bernard Akoto Boafo, trying to explain what he's trying to do with Japa. So I will go to Franklin before I come to Mr. Ahiagba on this matter. Franklin, good morning. Franklin, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. I was having a challenge with my audio.
Oh, yes.
How are you?
We are well, Franklin. So I'm sure you've been engaging the finance minister all week, and then I'm sure you've also heard some of the answers he's given to Bernard with regards to the queries he had. Is it beginning to make more sense to you now? And also, as Honorable Yunusef was saying, he said, have you averred your mind to this constitutional breach that he is talking about, which he says should have perhaps been the primary focus of the CSO objection?
Well, first of all, good morning to my good friends in the studio, and good morning to those watching and listening as well. Let me just say and put on record that, look, nobody has any issue with trying to maximize returns on assets, and especially when it's a national asset. The only reason why we have reached this stage is because, unlike the previous regime, where we decided that we're going to have a roadshow, a very stakeholder consultative approach, where we went from the north all the way to the south, every nook and cranny, explaining what our oil wealth was going to do for us. There were obviously these misgivings, right? I mean, there were some of us who said, because we can't trust politicians that much, let's use the money up front and spawn infrastructure development and ensure that we can benefit from the spin-offs. There were others who said, oh no, keep some of the money away. I'm sure that conversation is still being had. But even after all of that, we put up a Petroleum Revenue Management Act in place. Even after all of that, we still have issues. I'm sure you've heard almost successively every year since the last administration and now, we've had challenges with accounting for our revenues. In fact, as you speak, about 1.5 billion cedis is more or less missing in the last 2 years, and we can't account for that. So the legitimate calls that are being made about the openness of this deal cannot be just thrown overboard. And I come to the issues about engaging with the finance ministry. I think we applaud the finance ministry for beginning to understand that, look, this is just beyond parliament, especially when this deal was secured by a majoritarian partisan side. It was only beginning to look like, well, this was just a one set agenda, and there was a need to open up. So the opening up was done. When we did meet, it was an interesting conversation. We had no issue with, once again, I need to underscore that, because some people have misconstrued what I said on an earlier station, that nobody has any problem with maximizing value. In fact, as a center-right thinker, I believe in the capitalist maximization of resources. So it's a fundamental principle. What we disagreed with is over the valuation. Because you see, you cannot put in the investment agreement an expected $1 billion royalty when you yourself say you don't even know the price you are going to list to determine the market capitalization. That's what the finance minister is saying. That's where we disagree, because you see, there's a difference between price and value. Of course, if you have valued something, it only flows that the price you are going to sell it later would be born out of that value. Isn't that not the case? So that is where the quarrel really, I mean, using quarrel positively, that's where the quarrel really sits. How do you begin to value an asset and cast in stone, not movable, and then tell us that in the same breath, don't worry, when we go onto the market, we'll determine the price, where the capitalization will be done, and dividends will flow, knowing fully well that dividends will be just a top almost 1%. These were conversations we had at the ministry, and they bear us out. There's no way you're going to have more than percentage dividend from the assets. But the point to be made clearly is that we wanted to secure the rationale behind the valuation of these assets. Don't forget, there are two conversations on valuation. There's one on the royalties that are due, which has been cast in stone and is not movable. In fact, it's on the basis that you are going to the market. And so then we ask a follow-up question. Can you give us what went into the analysis, the pricing? That is where they promised sending us data. So that meeting was useful to the extent that, well, we had data issues and they are willing to share those data issues with us. That's by way of just summarizing. Of course, we disagreed over the tax haven issue. Even though I'm a capitalist through and through, I believe that tax havens sometimes are useful, but not useful for sovereign states. Because you see, the tax havens conversation must also be had in another construct. Look, there are many countries that are tax havens. Botswana is a tax haven. Mauritius is a tax haven. The tax haven in the sense that they are welcoming of what? Investors. There are countries you go in the middle, in the EU, in the European Union right now, the former communist satellite bloc, like Estonia and Latvia. There are almost no, in fact, they are so welcoming of investors that the rates are so low. So that is a tax haven. But the Jersey is not the typical tax haven we are trying to deal with. That ensures some level of secrecy. In fact, if a company listed in Delaware, a company listed in Switzerland, a company listed in Estonia or Latvia, because these are tax havens, and you go and find out whether you want to know the beneficial owners, those countries will give them to you. But when you go and list in Jersey, it is most likely you are not going to get the information because of the levels of secrecy. So that was also one of the departing points. In fact, of course, the minister did say that he feels that there's nothing wrong with that. We felt there was something wrong with that because, unfortunately, all the issues around natural resource governance and people who stash away cash in tax havens have come to bear when the Panama Papers came to light. So there are moving conversations, and we were quite happy that the finance ministry now says that they'll give us the basis for which they arrive at some of the valuation, because those were the questions we were asking for. We were not just throwing jabs into the air and then making it look as if we were just people who were interested in, derailing the process. As I've said, this is the only first time where you have even center-right thinkers like Imani agreeing with socially inclined organizations like ISODEC and co. So it tells you that we are actually aligned when it comes to natural resources and its governance. So that's where the conversation actually sits right now. And I'm not sure the finance ministry has yet answered the question very well on the issues of valuation. As I said, there are two parts of it. We are questioning the basis for arriving at the $1 billion royalty figure, which is the value they placed. And they themselves say, well, we can't tell you the price until we go to the market. So then we ask you, on what basis were you then determining the royalty when we believe that you could have gotten a bit more if you had waited or done just about a quarter of the assets you are actually trying to sell right now by direct negotiations. So there are moving parts of this conversation that are useful. And I can say that, yes, we had a good meeting, but we also disagreed to agree. We agreed to disagree, pending, obviously, the data we are yet to receive.
But it is also clear, because information had come out that, well, based on that meeting, the government was going to suspend it. But they have come out to say hold on.
Nobody civil society said the government was going to suspend it.
No. I haven't said that. I'm saying it was information that came out that has later by the finance ministry. In fact, if you look at today's Daily Graphic, it's quite clear that the arrangement is going ahead. So the engagement is going on, but it looks like, well, you asked for an engagement, you've been given an engagement, but the process, the end game is still the same.
And that is why there's a bit of a worry, and worry to the extent that, look, I understood perfectly the reason for the hurry. Truth be told, we do not have enough money. I can obviously tell you that resources coming from the port have depressed significantly. We are losing 200 million cedis a month. Take that from me. And so, look, and the finance minister has been very clear that, look, we needed to go in at a time when the price was right. And then he needs money for his Obantapa project, which nothing can be further from the truth. So the point is that is where we are saying that, well, don't rush it. Even if you need money, there's something I learned from my mother, that never negotiate when you have your back against the wall, because you'll be making all kinds of settlements you live to regret. So never ever negotiate when you're in adversity. I suspect that we are so adversely caught up that, well, now we probably need that money. It's the only reason why we need to do this in a hurry. Otherwise, look, the royalties flowing from when we do nothing at all, the royalty flowing is about $200 million a year. And we would have received that money in just a year and a half or two. So it tells you that there's a lot of pressure that we need to fix, we need to deal with. So I can understand the hurry, but we are also saying that, well, look, be careful. Don't sell yourself short, because you could actually get a lot more out of the conversation. And I can tell you for a fact that until we receive the rationale for the valuation and the listing price that would come out, I'm not too sure we are in fully with this agreement.
Okay.
But as I said again, nobody should have a quarrel with, and none of us, no one in the CSO community has a quarrel with the idea of maximizing value from assets. It is the structure and the vehicle and the approach that we need clarity on.
All right, then. Thank you very much, Franklin. Initial comments. So let me come to Danko Institute's director, and then I come back to Honorable Inusa Fuseni. So you've heard Honorable Inusa. He says this was a still best, basically, of this particular special purpose vehicle. Franklin and his CSOs are, well, they are still asking questions and are hoping to get more answers. From the Institute's side, can you explain perhaps the difficulty the finance minister has with why we need to do this? Because in clear-cut language, he's spoken a lot. He has not been able to answer that question.
Why we need the money?
Yes, now.
No.
Well, I thought it's evident. It should be evident that as a country we need money to develop, and so we need money. That's given. Now, but let me extend pleasantry to my brother, your good self, and Franklin, on the issue of the law and the breach of the Constitution. I think that it's a non-issue, because it's been addressed in Parliament, like you started, and Dr. Ayene continued. It was at a point dealt with. Now, I've been looking to see an occasion in our history where there was a law passed and the president failed to assent to it because he didn't want to, or he had problem with it. I have not seen one yet, unless you have.
Oh, no. Listen, the amendment to the criminal code, which we call the female rape, or what? Marital rape.
Yes.
When it was passed, Kufuor rejected it.
Okay. So in a history where we've passed in excess of some 1,000 bills, you have an instance of one where President refused, and maybe we'll have to see the notes that accompanied the rejection.
Yeah, he said he didn't like it the way it was.
Okay.
And then so we had to
rework it.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's in essence, it's a positive rejection of the law to improve it. So to go to town and say that, oh, because of this, a deal that we opposed before, you understand? So look at it. In principle, it is not the constitutional issue the NDC is concerned with. They were opposed to the structuring or to the deal to begin with. Okay? When you see the passage of that amendment, even, they were not present. They didn't participate. So now...
No, we participated.
They participated and left during the vote.
Amendment, no. I led my side. We participated fully in the amendment. Fully. I even sat in the committee.
Okay.
Fully.
Okay.
Yeah, there was no problem with the amendment.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Oh, good. So you see where the interesting thing is there. that you participated fully, pass a law that you are proud of, that this law is okay. That law is just pending signature. Somehow, you now reject that law as a matter of president not signing. Oh, hold on. President not signing it because you think that because the president hasn't signed a good law that you have passed, he will reject it. I'm not sure if they're thinking he will reject it because the law they passed is not good.
Lisa, you can write.
You understand? Okay. So my thinking is that the position of constitutional breach was an afterthought for the NDC. The original position was that let's reject this deal, which was what they did when the deal came to Parliament, they walk away and refuse to participate in discussing it. So for me, the constitutional breach is saying it's not the issue to discuss, because if that is the issue, as we speak, the law will be signed by the president.
One way or the other.
One way or the other. So there was no issue to do with that. It was just a question of time, and the law will be signed. And that, we all appreciate the circumstances under which this deal was happening. It's been delayed for a while. You understand? Given the environment, the COVID-19 environment, and how work has slowed down across board. So there is some inherent urgency in trying to get a deal done. That has not been shied away from. But what really is the problem, which now the NDC now has made it a point that they would hang on the constitutional breach as their main objection from beginning, was that now Ghanaians have come to know that they, when they were in power, were structuring much the same deal in this country.
Is that accurate?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I'm sure you're referring to the 2011...
2011 attempt that they made and didn't succeed.
But I can see the similarities, but to a point. The structure of the SPV in there, was it the same as what we have with the Japa?
It was matter of fact a securitization. They were going to list on the stock market. It was going to be, I think, was 49 point something percent, 48 point something percent, and 51 point something percent state and private. They had much the same split. You understand? So that was their fundamental position. That we don't want this, we don't want this. The law position was an afterthought. And that's why I'm saying, that it was not an honest position. You understand? So that is a given. Now, with Franklin's situation, I think that information would flow for them to come to understand.
Shouldn't it have flowed earlier?
Well, I told you the inherent urgency with the deal. And now... It
didn't look like, if you say this was an afterthought, the initial conversation we had heard from the government side was, this has been in the offing for 2 years. So if something has been in the offing for 2 years, you can't say there was an inherent urgency then.
Now, so the 2 years period that you're talking about includes the law itself.
Certainly.
Okay. And the process.
They count it as part of the process then.
Yes. That's what I'm saying. So, and that the process of crafting the parent law, and then leading from there, thinking what to do with the vehicle that was inherently built in the law, the SPV that was law. So then in trying to activate that, then you get to understand that, okay, well, the vehicle provided by the law is not as adequate as you would need it to be able to do the extent of operation you need. So you needed an amendment. You understand? So that's a process. It's not as if that it was done. So you are thinking about the best way to do it. Yes, so unless you arrive at your concrete approach, you cannot be speculating and be telling people, okay, I'm thinking this today, maybe it's going to change tomorrow. So you get to a point where you have a semblance of a structure that you want to move forward with before you can actually begin to dialogue with people about. And it so happens that this is gotten at this point with a crunch time moving forward. So I expected that if the conversation about this deal occurring in Parliament, if it was in good faith, okay, the way the NDC should have engaged, this conversation would have flowed parallel with how this thing is going in the same period of time, and people would have understood. Because it just took one day, one evening for the CSOs to meet with the finance minister, and they have come to a position where they have come to now. You understand? So that if the conversation in Parliament was, let's engage the merit of the deal, Okay, NDC at the table, let's engage the merit of it. And they did not seek to take political advantage of the thing in this time. We would have gotten to a point where this conversation would have been had in an environment of dialogue rather than the adversarial nature that it took, because the NDC actually muddied the water from the beginning and called this scam and the rest of it.
Well,
so that is the problem.
Wouldn't
not
you say
the
that the approach perhaps gave room for some of these things?
But you see, the NDC...
Because let's be honest, Richard,
Yeah.
but for the push of the NDC and the CSOs,